A lot of you know that I was in the plumbing and HVAC business for, well, next year will be 50 years. And I know I don't look that old.
Well, your daddy was a plumber,
My
right?
dad was a plumber.
Yeah,
My father, I always tell people, they say, this is kind of morbid. I say, my dad was a plumber. He died on a plumbing call. And that was the day I said, I'm going to teach. I'm not dying on a plumbing call. So anyway, what I did was I started focusing on it and Virginia licensed home inspectors. And so I thought, okay, they license home inspectors. I've got something behind it now to make them take classes. So I got this building here, and if you've been taking the classes, or if you've been, kind of following me around when I make my trips and stuff like that, I've been working on this place forever.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I've been working on this place forever. I mean, we're standing in what used to be 3 little rooms.
Well, the first time we came down here once
Yeah.
before, what was that, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
You've been working on it, you had about halfway done back then, and you've been poking along ever
And
since then.
And what happened, COVID
Yeah.
came along. I was also teaching HVAC too.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do Zoom classes for HVAC too and stuff like that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I started getting worn out.
Yeah.
I started getting worn out. So about a year ago, somewhere around a year ago, the landlord, the guy that owns this property, started talking about finishing up the building, and I managed to get in on it. And then a guy I'm going to introduce you guys to here in a few minutes, just down the hall here, he was interested in getting in here and helping me. He's an excellent instructor.
That's Stanley you're talking about.
Stanley, yeah. So Stanley kind of bought in on the business. First of all, it gives me a little break.
So you guys are partners now?
We are partners now. We're, a lot of the stuff hasn't been announced yet, but we've formed an LLC and
It sounds to me
everything.
like you just announced it.
Well, I didn't tell you the name.
But Stanley, we've got to have
Yeah,
that.
well, we got Stanley, but
I tell you
anyway.
what, before we move on, I got one order of business real quickly. In the Mac Ashy meeting, there was some confusion about the sign-in token, and that's my fault. So if you signed in with the word big and it was successful, that was a mistake. So what you need to do is find the most recent text message and use the word top, T-O-P. So our sign-in token for tonight, regardless of what meeting you are in, the sign-in token is top, T-O-P. So let's not get frustrated with this. Sometimes, especially new people, have a little bit of trouble with it. And that's okay. We've got Amanda and Judy will be in the help desk after the meeting. So just, if you know what to do, do it. If you're confused, don't worry about it. We'll handle that at the end. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Kenny.
So anyway, Stan was interested, came at the right time. Unfortunately, the economy was kind of slow. Home inspectors were kind of but he got in the right time for me, and I was able to finish up the building. And I hadn't been on the road for like 3 years and decided to go back out. Just a few months ago, I announced I was going to go back out, and all of a sudden, boom, I had 6 events lined up, and I didn't have to worry about things getting done here. So it was great for me.
Well, when you're good at what you do, the word gets out. Word of mouth is the best advertising.
Well, I did Mac Ashy first. That was the first one I had done in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And then, since then we've gone to Florida and South Carolina. I was in West Virginia last weekend. Tomorrow I'm heading to Korea with a K, I call it.
You do a lot of driving.
I do a lot of driving. I hate flying.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that I hate the flying. I'm not worried about the flying. I cannot stand dealing with the experience.
Yeah, right.
I just just forget it. I'd rather spend all day on the road driving than have to just get on that plane.
Well, the good thing about what you're driving is you're able to take your displays with you and show off,
Exactly.
show that stuff up.
Exactly.
You're not going to check that. You're not putting that in the overhead.
No, that's not going to fit. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'll be taking the tankless water heaters and things with me to Korea. And
That's in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, Kentucky. Yeah, Korea with a K.
Right.
We always joke about them. But a lot of this came about, the materials and all the equipment and stuff like that, because of Mike Casey. I don't know if Mike's on tonight, but Mike Casey and I talked about doing some of this stuff. And what I did was I managed to get some sponsors. Some of the names you guys all know, Carson Dunlap and the guys like that, Home Gauge, Horizon, all these guys. They sponsored a lot of this equipment. Well, it was mainly going to be on the road, And then when I finally decided to open the school, it was here. So I was able to use it. And I've added stuff along the way. But what I'm hoping to do is just provide some hands-on stuff for people, because I get a lot of people in here and we can tell they don't have a clue.
Right.
They don't have a clue. That's the first thing you need to know in home inspection is what everything is and what it's supposed to do.
That's what entry-level training is all about.
That's what it's about. So here, if if we're talking electric panel, we've got an electric panel that I sit in front of the thing and I go through it. I did pick up a stab lock panel. I picked up a Bulldog Pushmatic, and I picked up a Zenska.
Where are
they? They're in storage. Right now, you can see this room was packed.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the main classroom that we have. We use this for, usually we'll have 6 to 8 people, something like that can fit in here comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have our classes each month for Virginia home inspectors, and we'll have this class if we only have one person. The one thing I can't stand is to offer a class and, people all of a sudden get canceled at the last minute. So we try to do that. That's Stan. Stanley and I kind of complement each other in one regard. Most people know I'm the plumbing and HVAC guy. I'm a mechanical guy. And Stanley, he's one of these guys that drills holes in things, and probes and does that stuff. He's in east and stuff like that.
He does the destructive
he does the destructive stuff. But Stan is also an expert on your exterior claddings, your windows, your doors, air quality specialist, something like that. All the stuff that I don't care about. Mm-hmm. So Stan's able to help us on that. Stan, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stanley Iskolsky.
How do you spell that? Not Stanley.
Any way you want to.
Yeah, it gets a lot of different spellings.
So long as you pay me.
Yeah, what is it?
Y-E-S.
Y-E-K.
Y-E-S.
Y-E-S. Yes, Kolsky.
K-O-L-S-K-I.
Yes, Kolsky.
Yeah.
Y-E-S-K-O-L-S-K-Y. Yep. How'd I do? Pretty fast, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't ask me, because I won't remember how to spell brown in a little while. We've come to that conclusion lately. But
Kenny, why don't you show us around?
Okay, well, we'll start here. Again, most of you guys know I was in the plumbing and HVAC business a long time. I got my master's license in both trades back in 1982, the year my first daughter was born.
There you go.
So I kind of focused a lot of things like that over the years. This poster here, Plumber Protects the Health of the Nation. I remember that being in the supply houses when I was a young guy just hanging out with my dad, going on plumbing calls and stuff like that. So I gave it to him. I found a copy of it, gave it to him. And when he passed, I took it back. Nobody else at the house would want it. And one of the first things that went up on the wall when I started the school was a poster that I gave him. It's Plumber Protects the Health of the Nation. It's all American Standard poster. But a lot of this stuff, believe it or not, I went to VOTEC in 72 to 74, and I found my class book. I actually found that book. You can do stuff then you cannot do now. We would just dump R-22 in the atmosphere, back in the day. Today they put you under the jail if you do that.
Yeah.
But, things that interest me, I just brought here, put it up on the wall. We've even got it from your last meeting.
Oh, there you go. You got an OMG mug. Look at
Yeah,
that.
from the last meeting, different groups.
I like that
that I
coffee
work
cup
with.
too. I like that mug. Do you use that?
Yeah, that one there, I put candy in it. Everything with chocolates.
Okay, next subject.
But the wall is set up here, like I said, some of the stuff that I care about. I actually bought this ice saw, this shaver. I bought this when I was thinking about this. And back in the day,
So they're cutting the ice.
they harvest ice.
Harvesting ice.
They used to harvest ice. So they would put ice on rail cars, and a lot of times back in the day, you would take something from down south, put ice in it, and like a clipper ship. And clipper ships were made to be fast, and they had to get that ice moved quickly until we came up with refrigeration. But the reason I do this is because I like to talk about how we would harvest the ice. And there's actually a formula they used, and we figured out how many BTUs it took to melt a ton of ice. And we were able to do a mathematical equation, and we came up with essentially what we know today is 12,000 BTUs in a ton. So when we're out here sizing equipment, as an HVAC guy, I used to run manual J's and stuff like that on houses. It came from harvesting ice, a lot of it.
So if it takes 12,000 BTUs to melt a ton of ice, you have to extract a 12,000 BTUs to freeze a ton of ice.
Yeah, well, actually, the number was like 11,000 something, but we always round up. But anyway, I came up with that, and a couple of the first air conditioner.
That's the refrigeration side.
And that's one of the first. But when I was in vocational school, it was air conditioning and refrigeration.
Yeah.
I got my plumbing training for free from my dad.
Yeah.
And the heating, back in the day, when you talk plumbing and heating, you were talking boilers. Plumbers were heating guys too. So I got my training like that from them. So anyway, I just put this stuff up here. I like it. We got the screen will come down. We hold classes in here at least once a month. Stan has brought a exam prep class to us. He does an exam prep class for guys. We do that usually once a month.
NHIE.
Yeah.
Exam.
Yeah. We have to take it here. We really haven't got the word out there too much yet, but we had 5 guys the other day, and they were former students. They come in, they take it, and then they either struggle with the exam or worried about the exam and stuff. So Stan was able to put together something to kind of give them some help with that. And it was good because Kenny was tired of teaching. So anyway, like I said, the tool wall, those tools get used.
Yeah.
I mean, I still build exhibits, and I sit in front of this. I taught the HVAC2 class for a couple of years during COVID, right in front of that tool wall there. But I'll take that, take those tools off the wall and, put them to use. If you look in the back, you'll see the big workbench. I built that workbench so that we can put stuff on there. It's piled up today. But the workbench is there primarily so that, I can drag it out, put stuff on it. I wanted it big enough for a sheet of plywood.
It's on wheels.
Yeah, that thing weighs a ton. The wheels are rated at 800 pounds apiece, and that thing will just push and move just as easy as pie. So we use that, and over here, back over here, our electric board. We took this on the road a few times, but it's pretty much staying home now. But the electric board, we're able to, for new guys, able to sit in front of the thing. We literally remove wires and show them the difference between a number 14 and a number 12. Explain to them why they're fused the way they're fused, or the circuit breakers are the way they are, and just kind of go through things. And then I've tricked this out for different defects. And now I told Stan while ago, I said, I forgot my amp probe, but we actually take an amp probe and put it around this. We attach it around here, and I just show the guys the amp probe as I'm screwing in the light bulbs. The amp draw keeps increasing. So you can understand that it's like the work it's doing. And so we do that. Got a few things tricked out on this just to show people. Now this is something I actually use more for HVAC. But what I've done is, when you talk about step-up transformers, step-down transformers, and stuff like that, I just took a couple of transformers that used to be on most plumbing and HVAC guys' trucks. This transformer here, we feed it with 120 volts, and I show how it steps it down to 24 volts. That's a very common thing on a furnace. But then I take the 24 volts and feed it in this transformer. It goes through this transformer, and it's actually being used in reverse. Because what I do is, this transformer is made so that if you have a 240 volt circuit or a 208 circuit, 120 volt circuit, you can use this transformer. You just find the right leads and connect it. Well, I fed 24 volts in it backwards, and I get 120, 208, and 240 out of this thing coming out of it backwards, when we got it hooked up. So again, it was there primarily for the HVAC guys, trying to get them to understand, but it also points out the concern that we have with people tying a generator into an electric panel. Maybe they're feeding the transformer on the pole and energizing some dead wires somewhere, or some wires lying somewhere that could hurt somebody. Yeah. So we point stuff like that. But we got our GFCIs on here, and just the basic stuff to get people started. It's just the very basic stuff to get them going. This here, I actually showed them the difference in parallel and series wiring. We wired in series, unscrew a light bulb, and everything goes off. So we just explain the stuff like that. Very simple things. In Virginia, you only have to take a 35-hour course to get started. I actually get people that call and say, if I take this 35-hour course, will I be a home inspector? And I always say, not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close. You know, I'm going to be very honest with people. I say you could probably take a 150-hour course. You're still not a home inspector. You're getting started. I said you got to get out in the field. You got to work. You got to do it. It takes a while.
You need field experience. You need
So-
mentorship. You need mentoring.
Oh, absolutely. Virginia requires a lot of guys will call them ride-alongs, but you're supposed to be, you know, inspecting, and a guy's supposed to be looking over your shoulder, you know, trying to help you out. But we do require that, and I try to explain to them it's the most important part of the training. It's also the hardest part to get. Guys don't want to train their competition. Now, with that said, guys, I've got guys out here right now that are charging to take guys out. Yeah. You know, and I mean, I'm talking numbers. I've had people say the guy promised me my ride-alongs for, you know, several $1,000s. And I get guys from IT and stuff like that that have retired, and they pay. And, you know, so, you know, and I have, some people do it for nothing. Some people do it for $25 an inspection or whatever. We can't set that up. It's very difficult to set up. I do occasionally reward people that I know are taking guys out. We give them gifts, we give them ladders and things like that. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get people to do it. And again, I get calls from people that have gone to other schools. They say, you know, they were going to get some ride-alongs, they didn't get them. They want to know what we can do. The very first thing we tell them to do is join the ASHI chapter.
Join a chapter.
I said, go meet the guys. If you get something the first night, happens often. That'd be great. If you don't, you keep showing up.
And even if you're in a state that doesn't require it, it's still the thing to do, because that's where you
Absolutely.
That's where you get the
Absolutely.
leadership.
And people, you know, every group, you know, we got national associations and stuff like that. In my opinion, certain groups are better at things than others, but one of the best things that ASHI has is the chapter experience. By far, the chapter really works well. We have a chapter here in Hampton Roads. There's another chapter, CV ASHI. You got Nova ASHI up there, Mac ASHI, different ones. Well, CV ASHI and Hampton Roads are joining together. We got a thing coming at the end of the month to provide some training. But, you know, I invite all our students. We try to get them in there. You know, we have a little meeting down the street here. Occasionally, we have the meeting here. We just cater it and just have them meet in the room that we're going to go do next door. This is our wall. It was put together by Eric Fountain, who was the ASHI chapter president for Hampton Roads ASHI. Eric built the wall. You can see we've got our soffit here, our eaves. We really haven't got to put the shingles on yet, do some things like that, but it's coming.
Vents in there? You got soffit
Yes, it's coming, just to show them what things are. We've got our asbestos, you know, pretend, you know, it's fiber cement shingles, but a lot of people don't know until they touch it.
Yeah.
Until they really touch it.
Yeah.
Let Stan talk about it just a few minutes. He'll just talk to you a little bit about the wall. And again, that's more his stuff than mine.
Well, we use it to basically show what the sidings are, various sidings, show people what's underneath of it. And then we'll be adding to it like a cement board, James Hardy. I'll be doing the roofing, put examples in there. Most common things are shingles, but showing what like a nail pop is, improper nailing, you know, so people can really see it rather than illustration. And, you know, we can put like a wall here, and then I've got kickouts that can go up here so we can show the location of the kickout flashing, since that's, you know, talked a lot in the code now. And, you know, we can show the size of step flashings, just put a little piece in there, what to look for.
So what do you have down here? There's a fiber cement?
No, these first two are mainly just
Wood, it's not really a clockboard, but wood, overlap, you know, and then.
That's your novelty siding?
Yeah, and then we have, you know, the pseudo, asbestos cement, a T111.
With the Z flashing?
Yeah, we did that low so that they could see which is missing.
We purposely did this so it doesn't go on there on top, so you can actually see the Z flashing.
Oh, yeah, that's actually wrong, isn't it?
I'm gonna add a piece on it so it's like it's right, because that just bothers me.
Yeah.
I can't handle it.
Although, of course, you'd never notice that in the home inspection because it'll all be covered with something.
Right, it's all covered.
Yeah. And then you got some shingles, wood shingles down there, some
Yeah,
cedar,
cedar,
and then vinyl,
yep, vinyl,
And then
and
just
then some more
cedar
cedar,
clapboard.
cedar lap siding.
cedar lap. Well, I'm gonna make up some boards though with defects and things that people can kind of look at on the table here. I do a lot of exterior inspections for failure, building failures on roofing, exterior. I also do industrial hygiene work for sometimes disasters.
So you do a fair amount of court testimony?
A fair amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever defended a home inspector?
No. I've done.
And on the other side?
Done. No, I don't
You
tend
were
to
the
get
builders.
that. I
Usually the
do,
builders?
You know, it depends on who's got the money.
both ways, builders. It depends on what the case is.
Yeah.
I do a lot of technical reports.
Mhm.
A lot of times a good report will go ahead and bring the case to a close.
Mhm.
And I've gotten and done some mediation between, say, a builder or contractor and owner, where it's like they've asked me to kind of just mediate it and help them solve the problem and reach a solution.
Stan and I are about the same age, but he's in way better shape. Somebody asked me the other day about that. I said, well, you should see the crappy drinks. I said, some of us it looks like,
Carrot juice.
green
Carrot
juice and stuff like that. I said, I don't
Kale.
drink anything green on purpose.
Kale soda.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's better looking than you too,
Yeah,
Kenny. I gotta
that's right.
Yes.
That's why I'm covering mine with hair.
yeah. I used to do that, kept me warm
Yeah.
when working up in the north.
Well, we've got other things that we're working. I mean, we try to utilize all the space in this building. Look at the ceiling. We even put stuff in the ceiling tiles. We actually put stuff up there, the ceiling tiles. I'm not sure how well that is able for you to view, but anyway, we even try to do that. This is a board here that we put up recently. Again, being in the plumbing business, a lot of guys come in here, they don't know what things are. So we actually put the different plumbing materials here, plumbing fittings that we talk about, incorrect use fittings, things that you see out there in the field all the time. I picked this up over the weekend. I did a presentation in West Virginia the other day, and right in the middle of the presentation, I showed a slide of a shark bite fitting installed on a refrigeration line. And I said, that's not made for that. Shark bites are usually rated at 200 pounds. Well, an HVAC line is going to have, R410A is going to have almost 400 pounds pressure on it in many cases, maybe more. And so I said, they're not really rated for that. And one of the students said, well, they do actually make a push fitting now for that. So I said, well, I haven't seen it, but I did go and find it.
There you go, look at that.
And I put the two up, and you look at these, it's a substantial fitting. It's rated at like 800 pounds of pressure.
Wow,
So it's really rated for that. And it'll be good for things like line sets coming out of the walls, stuff like that. I don't see people using them at the compressors. But I mean, that would be a pretty good place to use it. We see stuff, at first we kind of shake our head, that's not gonna work, who knows? Even these fittings, I remember in the 80s, Delta made a fitting called a grabber. It's very similar to this. And one day they disappeared.
Yeah.
Because they were blowing off everywhere apparently, so they were having a real problem. But anyway, I got a lot of stuff that I've accumulated over the years. Suppliers have given me stands. This is more stand stuff, but we got the different kinds of siding materials. Roofing materials and things like that we're able to use. But again, I have a lot of material. I know you guys have been out in the field and you've seen this a few times. Somebody's double trap something, not realizing it. They come down from one sink,
That's right.
go to the other one like this. This is pretty common. We set up a whole bunch of,
So let's look at that for a second. So the one on the left, it has to go through two traps.
yeah, this would be like this. So this sink would come down, around, up, and so it's going through two traps.
So why can't you double trap? What's wrong with double trap?
Well, a lot of times you're going to get air pockets caught in there, so they're going to slow the drain down, and so forth. There's different reasons. But look at this.
That's not trapped.
That's not trapped at all, and that would be the dishwasher. But we've all seen it.
Right.
We've all been out there. Now this was actually on our
We've seen
sink
it, we may
display.
not have noticed it though.
Oh, but it happens all the time. People don't see stuff. It's on our sink display, which is in the other room. All that stuff just went to Florida. and we set up a big room for the Wynn franchise. And their guys went through and looked at all these defects we had put on things. Some of the defects are still on things. We're walking around and people look at it, I can say they're doing a double take at something, and I go, we did that on purpose.
Yeah, right.
You know, I don't want them to think, I don't want them to think something different. One of my
So you got a sump pump.
sewage
Oh,
pump.
that's a sewage
Don't
pump.
say sump pump.
Well, no, it is a
Sewage
sump pump.
pump.
It's a kind of sump pump.
It's a kind of sump pump, but what I always tell people when they're mostly talking about sump pump, we're usually talking about removing water from a basement or something like that. Of course, you know more about basements than I do. In Virginia Beach, we call basements swimming pools.
Well,
Yes,
so
sir.
I've got an E1 system that pumps from my house all the way up to the street.
Okay.
That thing, it's about 9 years old. I've already had to have it rebuilt once. It cost me
Okay.
$2,000 to rebuild it.
Okay.
It was 2 years old.
Yeah.
And just last week, I had them replace a switch for another $750. But that's a $5,000 pump.
Oh, sure. But you might just consider changing your diet
You think that'll help?
if you're eating up the sewage pumps. Now, this guy here is very basic, but we have pumps that are fluid pumps.
That's a $150 pump.
Yeah, this is not very expensive, and you can see it's not gonna hold water,
No,
I couldn't
not
say
like
that.
that.
But what we wanted to do is just show them, okay, this is what you see coming out of the floor. We talk about the venting, but here, you're supposed to have a way to disconnect it. You're supposed to have a check valve, a way to isolate it. You got to be able to isolate the thing. And so we just walk through the basics on this, but we do talk a little bit about the fluid pumps are primarily going to pump water. We do have some pumps that will actually pump up to like 2-inch solids, things like that. That might be your pump. Because if you're burning them up like that, that could be it. But we also have grinder pumps. You ask the average person what kind of pump they want in their house, they're going to say a grinder pump. But sometimes a grinder pump can actually be a problem for a system. If you have a septic system or something like that, these things will produce what's almost like a slurry sometimes. And it can actually get into the system and cause some problems. So you have to know what pump, to use. And as a plumber, we kind of did that. These were things that we, use routinely in this area when we call them paper streets. Down at the beach, some of the streets on paper, when you get there, are actually extended with several more houses on it. And you can't get in, you can't by gravity get into the sewer system. So we put these systems in and we pump uphill to the sewer system, primarily so they can sell 2 or 3 more lots on these houses near the beach. Because these lots down there are worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars and more in some cases, and they want to sell them. So we use a lot of them there. Whereas some guys will have a lot of basements. Some of the country has a lot of basements, so they'll have some lower systems that they need to pump up to go into the gravity system or something like that. We don't see too much of that. But anyway, you see it. So I just added the system and made sure that we had something here, at the school to actually look at it.
All about gravity.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But we try to cover the stuff. I guess some guys will come in here and say, well, I've never seen anything like that. I said, well, you probably will on the exam. And if you got to pass the exam, it doesn't matter whether you've seen it or not. I get that with boilers.
Yeah.
Let's face it, New England is just boiler rich.
Right, right.
But I worked on boilers a lot. So I'll cover boilers. But I've been to like Iowa and places like that, and I say something, maybe I can talk about boilers, and they say, no, talk about gas furnaces. Yeah. So, we go that way.
Well, I did a talk at the FADI, early in my teaching career. I did a class at FADI in Florida Association of Building Inspectors. And I talked for about an hour and a half about basements. And at the end, I asked them, are there any questions? And somebody raised their hand and said, what's a basement?
What's a basement? I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, so I learned you have to know your audience.
Yeah, exactly. This country is so vast. I mean, I've been to 48 states. There's so many things around here, or so many things around the country that they do not do the same. It's very common in Florida. You mentioned Florida, for them to have a slab, and they actually take a condensate drain and go under the slab, travel all the way out, get up the outside of the slab, and come up and then turn like a candy cane over. And I'm like, that's one hell of a long trap, that they beat. But it's a very typical thing that you'll see sometimes in parts of the country, and other parts we just wouldn't see it. Mm-hmm. It's just something you just wouldn't do. Now, beside you, Hollis, these are actually parts that I've pulled off of HVAC equipment, things like that. For instance, accumulator, when we talk about, determine if it's a heat pump, one of the first things we tell them, of course, is the reversing valve. So we show them a reversing valve.
Right.
And we tell them, you might see an accumulator on a heat pump. Some of the high-end air conditioners, you may see an accumulator
All right,
on.
so what is an accumulator?
Accumulator is a device that's in the suction line that it actually will help prevent liquid refrigerant from getting back to the compressor. That's its main job. And it's made so the way the internal workings of this is, liquid refrigerant would actually fall in the can instead of just being sucked right through the system and into the compressor.
So this is the compressor.
This is the actual compressor. This is a scroll compressor. It's kind of pretty much the rule now. We're using mostly scrolls out there in the field. It's a very rugged compressor. Does really well. I've seen some.
That has a block heater?
That actually has a crankcase heater on it. Again, probably more likely to see it on a heat pump. Again, some high-end equipment, they'll give you some extra stuff. Something that I like to do on heat pumps, so as I point out this. All right, this is a filter dryer. Filter dryer on a heat pump should have an arrow pointing in both directions. That arrow is pointing in one direction.
Oh, look at that.
So if it's in the liquid line, the refrigerant is going to flow in different directions depending on the mode.
Right.
But another thing I like to point out on this is this guy right here. People see this all the time and they say,
Well, that's a filter dryer.
they say that's a filter dryer.
It's not.
It's not. It's a muffler.
Aha.
It's actually a muffler. It looks like a filter dryer, but if you actually look at the writing on the other side, you can't see it here. It helps take and quiet it down, the compressor a little bit. A lot of times when a compressor is running, you can actually hear, I guess, carried through the tubing itself, vibration. And you can actually hear sometimes the pumping action of the compressor.
Right.
It would drive you nuts. That helps quiet it down. So that's the main thing. So the only thing I tell people about that is you look in, if it's really rusty, you're concerned with it, don't call it a filter dryer.
So can that be retrofitted if people have a complaint?
You can replace it. They can be replaced. Most of that stuff is. Some of this other stuff is just things we have up here. We move them around when we're trying to demonstrate draw-through systems and things like that. And I literally just took a coil and I can put it here. And I actually use a fan. So I show it drawing air through and discharging. Again, here, the same thing. This would basically be, what you would use on an air handler. We try to demonstrate blow through and draw through to kind of give them an idea. Here, this unit here, it's been around. I think I've had it at McAshey. I know I've had it in Maryland and some other states. We actually fill this up with water. We run it and show you that it does not drain without a trap. And it does not drain if you have a trap, but between the trap and the unit, you have an open vent pipe. If you have an open vent pipe, like if this unit was running right now and it was full of condensate, this drain would not drain. This trap would not drain. This one would. This one would actually drain because I've plugged it off. But I'll take this thing, I'll fill the system up, let it fill up with water, we'll run it. We actually just take and put a cap on it, set the cap on it, and it'll immediately start draining. Negative pressure gets pulled into this system and it stops it from draining. Without the trap, it's nothing to stop it from pulling it in. It's amazing when just that little bit of water in the trap keeps it from drawing in and it'll drain right out of the same pipe. But we do that all the time. We show people that. One of my pet peeves is you'll see a system set up, they'll have a trap on it, but then on this side, somebody will come in and just put a piece of pipe with an elbow and turn it down over a pan. Drives me crazy. Because the unit's running and it's sucking in hot air from the attic or wherever it's set up. It's not made to operate that way. If you don't trap it, then put a float control on it. Don't put it in such a way that it's going to suck in air, add to the heat load, the concern with the heat load, or if when it cuts off, all of a sudden, if this drain was stopped up, it would dump water in the emergency pan. Emergency pan's for emergencies.
Right.
It's not for every day. And so that kind of stuff, we're able to demonstrate it here with the glass on the side here, the plexiglass. We're able to kind of actually see things, how they're operating. Over here, the heat strips, we just point out it's a toaster with a fan. Is basically what we're talking about there. But some of the parts, we've got a full line of thermostats we're getting ready to add up there. We've got Nest thermostats and stuff like this. So we're going to show some of the basic stuff here. But
so Rattlelink is one of your sponsors.
Rattlelink was one of the sponsors of all things. basically they contributed enough money that I was able to, to buy that. I've had it all over the country. If you look at the desk in this room, the desk in this room are,
There's one from Carson Dunlop,
Carson Dunlop.
Carson Dunlop
Look what we
sponsor.
have here. We have
Inspector Pro Insurance.
Inspector Pro Insurance. And we got one with my name on it, but Inspector Pro sponsored a couple of our desks, the first desk, and then Carson Dunlop pretty much sponsored everything else. Alan Carson's been a really good friend of mine. He's helped me out with a lot of things over the years. And we got a room next door that's just stacked full of these things that we use in our other room sometimes.
Well, Carson Dunlop is the real deal.
Yeah.
They're the real deal.
Yeah.
They
No
deliver
doubt about it.
top quality.
No doubt about it. But we've got
Alan's
things
a good
here.
man. Alan's a good guy.
Oh, the best,
Yeah.
But we've got things in here. Mike Casey, again, he sponsors stuff. Some of you guys have seen my trailer that I drive around in.
Yeah, I was looking for it in the parking lot. I didn't see it.
It's at my house.
Okay.
Yeah, when it's not being used to advertise, it's being used to put Kenny's stuff in.
Okay.
So, but anyway, we had stuff from Recall Check, Home Gauge, different companies over the years have been kind enough to sponsor us. And their name goes on our stuff, and it's been there for a long time. I will tell you, the trailer's almost had it. The trailer's been out here a long time. That trailer's been,
It's got some miles on it on that.
well, it's been to Vegas, and
How many
it's been to Fort Lauderdale a couple times. It's been to Fort
Couple
Lauderdale, Fort Lauderdale as well. So I don't know how. Okay, all right. Well, let's walk next door
Okay.
beside it. And Stan and I are doing homeowner classes now and showing people how to install sinks, how to install some basic plumbing. If you look down here, the toilet, the lavatory, you guys have no idea how hard it was to keep Hollis away from this toilet. And,
Kenny, can we do it just a real quick sound check? Can people hear us okay?
And now.
Okay, good.
okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, this stuff is
Yeah, here you go.
basic stuff. Of course, we always see the old proverbial S-trap. The S-trap's always going to show up on stuff.
Okay, so what's wrong with an S-trap?
An S-trap siphons, essentially. There's a couple ways it can siphon. It siphons by momentum, just the water going out of it. As a plumber, I can tell you, I don't know how many times as a plumber, I would tell someone, well, you got an S-trap, we probably should take the S-trap out. I go, wow, that sink drains great. It drains too great.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It actually goes so fast. It'll take the water in the trap down below the dip of the trap and allow sewer gas to get in it. The other thing would be,
So it siphons itself dry.
yeah, but, well, it siphons it. All it's got to do, remember this, on a trap only has to get below the dip. The top dip of the trap, all it's got to do is get above that. And then what you end up with is sewer gas is going into the space. Now, if
So
this
you
was,
have a privacy issue in this bathroom now.
well, this one would be a privacy issue. But, it would probably be even worse because it ain't bolted to the floor and you'd be filleting in the floor where your pants down. So that would definitely be some, a real problem. But anyway, the other problem you have with these is if this was tied into a drain, in some cases, as the water would rush by, a slug of water would go by, it could actually pull some of the water from the trap because you can't really vent this trap the way it's set up. That said, when I'm out here inspecting, I would tell people, I let them understand what the concerns were with the S-trap. If there's something they weren't going to attend to for a while, I would recommend them, you take the trap off, you put a T in there, or you use an AAV, you can get away with it or something like that. But so many times when I would inspect a house like this and explain to them, that, well, we're getting ready to go to the bathroom anyway. So we'll make sure they upgrade your plumbing so that it's a properly vented drain, is what we tell them. But, we just, how you handle that is up to you. I don't care. I just tell them the concern with it.
So I like the way you not only pointed out the problem, you explained why it's a problem, how it malfunctions, and then you gave, as you suggested, a solution.
Yeah, and the only reason I did that is because, and I don't know how other states are. I know ASHI is pretty much in favor of this. I know Virginia is in favor of it. If you have additional training, and I have 3 trade licenses, so I have additional training, and I'm not going to do the work for them. I'm just telling them there's a way around this that, they might have more important things. The easiest way to keep an S-trap from putting sewer gases in the house is every time you walk by the sink, you turn the water on. To be perfectly honest with you. But The average person is not going to do that, so you just explain to them that there's ways around it. You know, I don't typically on something like that, if they've got that and they've got a problem with a water heater, the water heater concerns me the most. The water heater concerns me the most. By the way, if you look at this, that's a number 14 piece of Romex.
Whoops.
A little small.
Yeah, whoops.
We had this set up as a defect exhibit recently. One of the things that I really push in my classes is this concern with TPR valves.
Well, I remember you saying that you think of that as the most important valve in the
Yeah,
house.
probably, certainly the most important plumbing part, maybe the most important safety device, because people don't realize the danger a water heater can present. Now, you talk to the average person, you ask them, what causes a water heater to blow up?
They say pressure.
They're always going to say too much pressure. No, too much temperature. You'll have this water under pressure.
Well, it's not too much temperature, it's too much heat energy.
Exactly.
Right.
But the easy way to say it is to get them to understand is, what is it? It's a TPR valve.
Temperature
Pressure. The temperature is the problem. You could take a regular tank of water, probably pump it up and poke a hole in it, and you know, it's going to spray. It's going to the likelihood of it exploding is pretty slim. But you take a water heater and you've got superheated water in there because it's under pressure. And that water finds a way to get out of here. When it hits that atmosphere, we got a rocket. Yeah. And people get killed. I always point out the case that happened in Spencer, Oklahoma, where it killed a bunch of children in a school, took a wall down, water heater blew up, and there was a TPR valve on it. But the maintenance guy had clipped the thermostat off of it, so it only reacted to pressure. And it blew a block wall down, killed a teacher and 5 or 6 students. You know, and so it's just really important. So when you go through that list of things on your TPR valve, you know, don't reduce the pipe, all these different things, then I just think it's important that we that we look at that and we make sure that our clients know that, you know, that's a real important thing. It's absolutely a very, very important thing to do. I get asked this all the time, so I'll go ahead and cover this. People will say, can you use PEX as the relief valve line? A lot of areas will allow you to use PEX. They want it secured, of course. It can't go down and go trapping and things like that. But so they want it secured. But if you look at the International Plumbing Code, International Residential Code, a cycle or two ago, I can't remember exactly when, they do actually want you to increase the size. So you put a 3/4 by 1 adapter on here and bring it up to 1-inch PEX. So you'll see that if you look in the code. In Virginia, we can't talk code.
Well, I think every inspection I did ever done out on the northern neck, they all had a 3/4 to 1/2 inch reducer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That was just
That's just worse. But you think about a PEX fitting. PEX has got a real thick wall, so the fitting that goes in there is going to restrict it even more.
Right.
So the idea behind it was you put the fitting in there and increase the size. It's just like most of us know that there's a limited number of elbows you can use to vent this device. In most cases, Watts has it written on the side. It says 4 elbows. And I have people say, well, they had like 6 or 7 elbows on there. Kenny, I didn't know what to tell them. There was no other way to get it out. What you do when you have a situation where you have to have more elbows, you increase the size of the pipe. Essentially, just make the pipe bigger. You know, you can even pipe a drain out to a place where it can discharge in a proper way and connect it. But the main thing to do is just increase the size of the pipe so the restrictions aren't as great. So that's how we take care of that. Over here, Inspector Pro sponsored our electric meter. Our gas meter. And the main thing I use this for is just to show them what one looks like. And to be honest with you guys, we have a lot of CSST. And we just point out where the clamps are usually located, out near the meter, burn pipe as it enters into a utility room or something like that. That's the main reason that's on there.
All right, so what's the purpose of that bonding?
The bonding is to provide the continuity through the system that you lose primarily in the fittings with the CSST. In our area in Virginia, and of course you know this, we actually have a boilerplated statement that we put in the report if we see the yellow CSST. If the house was built before May 1st, 2008, we're required to put a statement in there that says, basically telling you the material should be bonded and so forth. we're not supposed to tell them if it's bonded. We're not supposed to test to see if it's bonded. We're just supposed to put this statement in there, say it's best if bonded, have somebody check it and is qualified to do it. So electrician, usually what we're talking about. The reason for that is I was out here plumbing at that time. The plumbers didn't know about it, so they didn't do
No, I had
anything.
electricians.
Plumber ain't gonna go in a panel.
Yeah, I had electricians and plumbers both calling me on the phone,
Yeah.
asking me, where is that in the code?
Yeah, so they're not gonna do that. And then and really, a lot of that's the stuff that you see in the instructions.
Yeah.
You know how it is, the code will say, look at the instructions will say, look at the code. You know, we're like, ah. But anyway, that particular thing, I'll get guys in the class, sometimes will tell me, well, then, you know, if I see the clamp on there and so forth, you know, should I say it's good? No, it tells you to put the statement in there. It tells you exactly what to do. Do it.
Okay, so let me interrupt for a minute, and what I'm gonna ask our audience to do, our attendees, if you're in a different state other than Virginia, would you put in the chat whether or not your state has a similar requirement? If you're in a licensed state, is there something in your state license law or city or county license law that requires that you put some kind of specific boilerplate language in your home inspection report if you have the yellow CSST? Just put that in the chat. I'm just curious. I want to see how many kind of responses we get. Because I know Virginia and Maryland are almost identical, that requirement, what Kenny just said a minute ago. So I'm wondering if there are other states. I'm curious.
And from a legal perspective, I love that because it tells us exactly what to do. And if we just do what they tell us to do, you know, you say, well, that's what they told us to do. It isn't this, well, in my opinion. Nobody cares about your opinion. We know about opinions. Everybody's got them. So they don't care about that. So anyway, we've got a few more things in here. A lot of times when we're talking about water heaters, or furnaces, guys don't quite understand the difference between a category 1 furnace and a category 4 furnace. Category 4 furnace is usually, people refer to it as a condensing furnace. And with this furnace, we're actually able to turn it around.
Can you put this camera on?
And show them there's 2 heat exchangers. Primary heat exchanger, the secondary heat exchanger. This is where all the magic happens. It condenses. We get the condensate out of the unit. Whereas this one, most people, we just let them look into the top of it. It's got 1 heat exchanger. This furnace is a category 1, and it can actually be vented a lot of times, and is often vented with a water heater, be combined with a water heater. Whereas this one, category 4 furnace, pretty much needs to be independent. And so we point out stuff like that. We're not gonna run it tonight, but I've got this tricked out. We let it simulate conditions, and it doesn't fire. We can't fire it in the building. But what we do is when it's time for it to fire, when it is actually time for it to fire, blue lights will come on the burners. I don't know if we're having a problem with that, but I don't see the light on. Is it still on?
We're on this camera now.
Oh, you're on that camera.
We're on this
Well, that's
camera
why I
now.
don't see the light on.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, we can do things like when we run this furnace, we plug them in, and it'll actually show the pressure switches of kicking it off. So we're able to do that. On this guy over here, we had it. I mentioned earlier we had it in Florida. A very common thing that I see is the piping done this way. Union often on the wrong side. I call it a running sediment trap. It's a very common problem. So when we set this up for defects for the wind group, we just set it up that way. Typically, you want to see the gas line enter through the branch and then out of the run come over and then tie into the unit. Or if it comes into the top of the run, we want the branch to feed the unit. But this is a very common way that people do it. It's incorrect. It's incorrect. The other way is the way to go. And I don't think you can see this, but I have the word A coil written on that box. This is an upflow furnace. You don't want an A coil there.
Are other people having trouble with the video?
I got one comment saying somebody's is having trouble with the video. Or is anybody else having trouble with the video? It's just one person?
No.
Okay, keep going.
Pay your cable bill. So anyway, that's why we set that up that way. We set it up, we put the A coil basically so that it would have to draw the air across that A coil before it goes to the furnace, which if you've ever seen one done that way, you know it's going to condensate. The furnace is probably going to be a chunk of rust in 2 or 3 years. So we just set it up that way for an exhibit, but we were able to kind of play with these things and do different things with them because, we have the class next door. All right, is it on this? Okay. Come over here a minute with that. Every now and then I'll hear somebody say newer water heaters or FBIR. That's like 2003. So I guess it depends on your definition of newer water heater. But, the thing that you typically would see that would say FBIR would be, it's gasketed, it's sealed up. Most of them are going to have, either on the side or front of it, you're going to have the little like igniter to light them. The idea behind it is we want to keep them sealed up, and we want to let the gases and the combustion air go in kind of in a certain pathway. We want it to go in here and go up. What they're doing is they're funneling it down and up. Here's the actual pathway that it takes, goes in, it's down. And if flammable vapors do get in there, the flammable vapors can go up through an arrestor plate. And if they do ignite, the arrestor plate keeps the fire from coming out, essentially. Keeps the fire from getting back out. So they started doing this. They kind of phased them in like 2003, 4, 5, something like that. I don't quite remember the dates, but anyway, they in a lot of areas we were putting water heaters up on stands, and in some areas when they came out with FBIR, they allowed them to go back on the ground.
That's the idea that the combustible fumes are down.
Yeah, they're lying low.
Right.
Yeah, they're lying low. Every now and then I'll get an email. I get a lot of emails from people that ask plumbing questions and stuff, and they'll say, Kenny, the glass was knocked out of this. I said, well, it ain't FBIR anymore.
Not anymore.
I said, so, they say, well, should I tell them to raise it? I'm like, well, tell them to get the glass fixed. But I've had a couple of guys call me and say, I like to open them up. I like to look at the fire. Don't open that up and look at the fire. You don't have a gasket to put these things back together. You can take the cover off and look through the porthole here, a little peephole to see it, the sight glass, but do not try to take this off and get in there. Now, when these guys first came out, I'm going to tell you something that was told to the trade. There's going to be no issues with them. Don't worry about venting and don't worry about them getting clogged up, the vents in the side getting clogged up. Everything will be fine. Wasn't too long after they started coming out, we started getting calls on them where they had locked out. They were actually shut themselves off. They were locked out. We opened them up and we found dryer lint in there. If you find dryer lint in them, there's a good chance that when that dryer lint flashes off, it probably simulates a little mini explosion. How many times have you ever seen dryer lint actually ignite? It goes, woof, it just flashes real quick. I know because I was under a house one time. I got to tell you the story. I'm under a house and
He just discovered he's got 25 minutes now.
yeah, I'm trying to fill it up. So anyway, I'm under the house and I'm under there working, and all of a sudden I see that the dryer vent's disconnected, and there's 25 feet of dryer lint clinging to the bottom of the insulation. And I crawl to the far end of it, and I got to solder a pipe. And I'm under this house, and I light my torch, and as I roll over to solder, it hits the lint. And it goes 25 feet before I can even say what I said. And I literally reached up and grabbed the insulation and jerked on it like this, and insulation started falling down. There was embers and, flaming particles from the dryer lint floating through the air. I about had a stroke, man. It about killed me because I just knew I just set this house on fire. But it showed me how fast that stuff flashes off. It just goes boom so quick. So a lot of times for maintenance, they do recommend that if you can get at them and clean them out in here, get that lint out of there, it's a good idea. It's been my experience as a plumber that if they're anywhere near a dryer, even if the dryer's vented properly, lint gets out of it. The lint will figure out a way to get out a little bit, and it seems to go into here. So anytime I see it near a dryer, I point out, maybe get some regular maintenance to make sure it's cleaned out. because it will seem to get in there. For some reasons, it finds its way in there. But other than that, I have never really had a whole lot of problems. I've never really had any issues with them at all. But I remember that primarily because I remember going into classes and they said, there's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Which reminds me of another thing, tankless water heaters. Kenny's sitting down because Kenny's old. So tankless water heaters, I've got a Rinnai gas tankless water heater here. On the backside, we have an electric tankless water heater.
How dependable are those electric?
I don't know, I've never used this one.
Yeah, I don't hear good things about that.
Well, you know, this guy has two 40 amp circuits going to it. Okay, and I've seen them 120 and you know, up there. As a plumber, I've put in two, and both of them leaked. I had to put in another one that same day because I put it in, I turned it on, and I had problems with them. So, but if you got them, I'd love to know how well they work for you. You know, my experience has been limited because usually when I go to a house, I'm not putting in electric things. I'm taking out electric things. I used to take out electric boilers, if you can imagine that. You know, they would ask me, is it very efficient? I said, it's extremely efficient. You know, it's like 100 AFU rating on them. I said, they're very efficient, but it's very expensive. You know, people didn't quite understand the idea behind it. But you would get that because people got convinced to do the boilers because they didn't want to do oil. Oh, if we could go back to the days when oil was at that price. I mean, I remember buying oil for, 50 cents a gallon and probably less. But today, that's not the case. These are probably the more popular. The Rinnais are, they got a lot of different names out there, but these are tankless and gas, and probably the biggest. Let's put it this way. Here's the situation I got. Phone rings, I answer the phone. My gas water heater is leaking, and I want to replace it. I said, okay, about how much is that going to cost? Back in the day, it would be like $1,000. I said, okay, $1,000. I know. Why don't you put me in one of those water heaters that just makes hot water all the time? Those new they never called them tankless.
Right.
Called it instant.
Right.
Instamatic. They always had a name like that. It was never tankless.
Right.
And they would say, how much is that going to run me? And I say, about $2,500, $3,000, something like that. And then I would get, that other water heater worked just fine.
It works just fine.
But I would get it. But I never sold a tankless water heater to anybody telling them that they were going to save on their bill. Or they was going to be energy efficient, that they were going to save. I just didn't push them that way. The reason to buy them, I would tell them, is to have continuous hot water. All the hot water you need. You size them properly. We size this based on the faucets sizes and so forth. If you got a big Roman spout, big old tub with that, you're going to need a pretty good sized heater to be pumping that water out. But the reason I never put it that way is because here's the rule I came up with, or the save. If you have unlimited hot water, you'll use it. And what I mean by that is, when I would take that heater out of a house and I would put one of these in, they didn't run out of hot water, so they just stayed in the tub or stayed in the shower. And so they get out of the shower looking like a prune. And so when they would call me and say, I'm not saving any energy, I was saying, I bet your water bill went up too. Yeah. And they would realize that was the case. So you could certainly do it. In some cases you could probably save on your bill a little bit. But the reason to buy these things is so you got continuous hot water.
Well, I ask people who tell me they have them, I said, do you like it? And they tell me, oh, I love it. And I said, well, how can you love a water heater? I was like,
well, I used to love them because they made me good money. Remember what I said. Yeah. But anyway,
so is that direct vent?
This one, it has its own venting system, but yeah, essentially it's direct vent. The vent's not on it, but it would go, this would mount up inside the house and vent directly out the wall, being elbow.
So what does that mean, direct vent? What does that mean?
Essentially what you've got on direct vent is you've got an isolated venting system where you're bringing in your fresh air from outside and you're discharging your used up spent fuel essentially in an isolated manner. You're not taking it from the house, you're not taking it from other spaces you're taking it from the outside and you're venting it outside. And this one does it all in one pipe. This one does it all in one pipe, so it discharges out there. So, and the beauty of that is,
You're talking about a concentric termination?
yeah, that's essentially what this is.
Right.
And the beauty of this is that if you're taking in the fresh air from outside, it's usually not going to have the stuff like this water heater here might be pulling in the air from in the house, and we're going to have malamides and all kinds of different things in there, and the vented gases are probably going to be way more dangerous in many cases. Whereas these will take it from the outside, and it's usually going to be cleaner. And there, in many cases, some of the rules for where you can vent them are a little less restrictive on a direct vented appliance than it would be on a two-pipe system.
So these things require a certain amount of maintenance, though.
The biggest thing for maintenance on this would probably be, other than just a, general looking over and maybe a vacuum or something like that, would be flushing. Now, I use these particular valves on here because the way they're made, you can actually come in and shut the valve off. This valve is actually already shut off. You can open these ports, open the port, put a hose on it, and you can put a hose on the inlet, a hose on the outlet. And usually what we use is like a 5-gallon bucket with a little pump inside. I'm going to do this over the weekend at CREA. We're going to demonstrate how you flush off one of these heaters. But what it does is you can buy descaler. A lot of guys will use descaler with vinegar. Some people just use vinegar. But anyway, you pump it through the system. It goes through the coil. It comes right back out, goes right back into the same bucket, and you just let it sit there and cycle through over and over and over again. Some of them recommend 30, 40 minutes or something like that. You just let it go through it. It's very similar to the way I used to do the same thing for tankless heaters and boilers.
So you're descaling.
Yeah, essentially that's what you're doing. That's another thing that when they first came out.
You're not cleaning it.
It's descaling.
Yeah.
When you first do it a little bit, then when you're finished and you isolate everything, you flush a little clean water through it and let it go into your bucket or whatever, and then you're ready to fire it up again.
And how long does that take then?
Well, again, typically 30 to 40 minutes.
But how frequently?
Usually when you find someone that puts a time on it, it's every year. But you'll know. I mean, the guys in your area will be able to tell you, it's not as bad here as in other places, or, it's a lot worse here. You just don't know. It's what we got. I would imagine well water would be different than city water.
So a tank type water heater, we're going to deal with the capacity in gallons.
You deal with it primarily the number of bathrooms and the people you have in the house. Whereas on a tankless heater, we're really sizing it based on the outlet size of the fixtures. You think about this. This thing is going to come on and try to heat the water as it's flowing through it. Okay? So as it's flowing through it. Now, if you're doing a little faucet, it'll come on, and most of them are more or less firing the rate that they need to maintain that water temperature. So they may not be using very much. But if you're firing this thing for, let's say, a couple of Roman spouts, big old jetted tubs, or some big old honking shower heads or something like that, this thing is going to have to fire up quite a bit hotter, longer in order to take care of it. You're going to have one that's capable of handling the load. By the way, when I mentioned a while ago, when I would tell someone, the difference between putting one of these in as compared to just replacing a regular water heater, a regular gas type water heater, a storage tank heater, the difference is primarily in the gas line. If you got a standard traditional gas system on your house, it's probably not big enough. It's probably going to have to be upgraded. Now, if you live in an area like here in Virginia Beach, we have 2-pound systems. On a 2-pound system.
You're talking about the gas pressure.
The gas pressure is 2 pounds of pressure. That's basically considered high pressure, but it's 2 pounds of pressure. Okay, so when the 2-pound systems are operated, you will actually see a small line come in and a regulator. This is a natural gas system. In our area, we use many times we'll use a piece of 3/8 copper tubing, bring it up to the regulator and the valve and so forth, the shut off and everything. And it goes to the regulator. Well, this guy might open up to 190,000 BTUs. when it's firing because it's trying to maintain a couple of big faucets or something like that. Well, this guy here, it maxes out at like 40,000 BTUs, the regular storage tank heaters. And back in the day, they were 29,000 BTUs. So when you go to replace this for one of these, you're almost always going to have to do something to the gas line. Again, if you have a 2-pound system, you can probably get away with a lot less work. But if you have a traditional system, it's like an eighth of the pressure that a 2-pound system has on it. And you're going to have to put a big, it really is, we're talking more about volume of gas on that system. So we're going to have a bigger line. And typically, if you see a water heater installed, one of these guys behind me installed, it's going to have a half-inch pipe probably installed to it. You know, it can come off of the main, not too far away, but it'll be a half-inch line. Whereas this guy here, you know, you would probably be a minimum of 3/4, even if it's a small one, and in most cases, a 1-inch line or so. So you would see that.
So Kenny, when you were over looking at those furnaces over there, that's when we lost audio.
Oh,
Can we
okay.
go back over there?
Sure.
I think we got a couple more minutes, Matt.
Okay. Well, what I was talking about over here, I'm going to go around so you can get kind of eyeball it. What I was talking about on this is a condensing furnace. It's some people call them a 90% furnace. It's like 90+%. There's 2 heat exchangers on this furnace. This first heat exchanger is coming right off of the burner. The first heat exchanger, the gases work their way around and eventually work themselves down into the secondary heat exchanger. That secondary heat exchanger, right where my hand is.
Yeah, we can see your hand, you're good.
Okay. All right, if you look into this, you'll see the primary heat exchangers up top and the secondary heat exchanger below. The secondary heat exchanger reminds a lot of people of an air conditioning condensing coil or an air conditioning evaporator coil. This thing has got small tubes running through it. All that aluminum is more or less just, you know, your heat sink device. When this thing is operating, the first part of this process goes through your primary heat exchanger. When it gets down here and is trying to pull, the fan is pulling the gases through the heat exchanger, the blower on the furnace is below it. When the blower of the furnace comes on, it pulls the cooler air in the house, like 70-degree air or whatever in the house. It'll pull that air in and it'll blow it across the secondary heat exchanger first. That causes the heat exchanger to cool down, and that's where we get the condensing. We extract the amount of heat out of it is extracted to the point where we're causing it to change state. And then we end up with condensate that will come out of that, go into the little drain system that's built into it. And some of you guys will run it through a device to neutralize the acids that are in it. We'll do it to neutralize the acids that are in it, and then we'll let it drain into the plumbing. Some people are draining it on the ground. It just depends. It just depends on you know, how you guys are normally draining. Around here, we don't have a lot of basements. We don't have a lot of floor drains and stuff like that.
Move the speaker out of the way.
My crew's going crazy over here. So anyway, this is a category 4 furnace. It's again, this furnace, if you're out there in the field and you see this furnace tied in with something else, and generally what we see in the field is a water heater tied in with the furnace. If it's a category 4, we don't really want to be seeing that. There's a problem with that. Whereas the category 1 furnace over here, very common to see that tied in to a water heater and, you know, side by side, typically in a garage or a utility room or something like that. So that's the main thing I was talking about on this a little bit earlier. And what I did say, I'm not sure if everybody got it. We don't fire these in the school when we're training them, but I've got it set up so that when it runs through the cycle, we trick it out, make it do certain things. When we do trick it out to run, when it gets to the point that it's ready to fire, we let blue lights come on the burners. We got LEDs pushed down the burners. So again, at the home inspection school, a lot of these guys have never even heard a furnace operate. So we plug this in, we just let it run through some cycles. And then we also point out that it's going to flash a digital code, a pattern with the lights, and it's going to tell us if whatever the particular concern is. And in that case, we usually have a guy sitting in the room that reads the code, and I'll let the class decide on what's going on with the furnace. Is it a rollout light? Is it obstructed? Is it an obstructed vent? Sometimes, on this one over here, I actually take the burner out sometimes and just demonstrate on the burner how the gas burner will typically fire on one side, it'll ignite the gas, and then the gas has to roll over to the opposite side so that the flame sensor will sense that it's lit all the way across, so that all the burners are operating, and we don't end up with an explosion with a little bit of gas going out the end. I've worked on burners over the years. I can tell you, gas is not very forgiving. If you don't ignite it when it's supposed to ignite and you build up a little gas, it'll let you know it. Oil is more forgiving. You can let some oil run into a furnace. It'll ignite. In many cases, it'll rumble, it'll thump, it'll kick a little bit, smoke. But on gas, it can take the doors off of one, pretty quickly. So, Hollis, how are we doing?
I think we've had a wonderful time.
Okay,
This
good.
is
I appreciate you guys coming here.
yeah,